I'm really grateful that everyone is here tonight. Introduce myself. My name is Mark Ehrlichs, and I am a healer by the grace of God. This is all that I do in my life. It's the same spiel I give all the time. And I've worked with and taught maybe about 25 to 35,000 people over the many years. So in the past 46, 47 years now, God. And a couple things I'd like to mention is that before we start here, we have such a small group tonight, but that's fine. That's really fine. And let me get rid of this. We've been having a Series 1 class, Introduction into Spiritual Healing, which is for 5 days. Excuse me, it's a 5-day class and it'll last for another 2 days, and it is incredible. Information is coming out of me. I'm learning from as well. So that's enjoyable, and hopefully everyone else is soaking it up. And I'm grateful if you are. And there'll be another one that is coming up soon as well. These gatherings are recorded, and there's going to be a replay on them as well. So please, if you want to share them with anyone, that's great. And once a month, we have a healing circle that's open to the public and everyone on the internet. There's lots of participants. It's fun, and I just give everything from my heart. And I hope there's change that's either relieves you from your discomforts or changes you totally in life through something that happens from within you. And I've seen all kinds of stuff happen with diseases of all kinds, infirmities, injuries, whatever. I work with people through appointment, either on FaceTime or on what you call a Zoom, and or just regular telephone call. And so please, if you're interested in an appointment, go to my contact information, and Lynn will post the contact information when she can on this little live video. And I have another class coming up as well, an introduction, in a couple weeks. And so the people that are involved now are just they're enjoying it. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of learning of spiritual healing, and it's very experiential. People have exercises, simple, that they can do them, and that will take them or catapult them into a different understanding completely, which is what it's really about. Hey, Gail, good to see you, my dear friend. Thanks for being here. And see, if anyone misses any of this, you can go back to the replay. It'll be a couple minutes after we're finished. It'll be put up on the Spiritual Matters, or excuse me, Spiritual Healing with Mark Ehrlichs on the site there. And if you're not a member of Spiritual Healing with Mark Ehrlichs, then just request to be friends, and I'll immediately improve. I'll approve you. And so let's see. Other than that, we do this once a week. And Teresa, hey, good to see you. Thank you for being here, Teresa. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so, again, if anyone misses any of this, there's a replay right after. And so, let's see. What I like to do is answer questions about healing or spirituality or whatever, pertaining to spirituality, or questions about your life that I may be able to answer. I don't know. Sometimes I see things, sometimes I don't. I love working and talking about spirituality. A lot of it is unknown information to me, but then as we start talking, it just comes forth, and we both learn. So, Taylor, hey, good to see you, my dear friend. It's been a long time. Good to see you, Taylor. And yes, I'm very healthy. Thank you, uh, Teresa. I appreciate that. Uh, a very odd thing happened today was that it's been cold and then it started getting a little warm for a few days. And then all of a sudden, I got this neighbor who started mowing their lawn and the grass hasn't grown. And it really confused me. And in another day or two, it's going to get down to maybe a high of 19, and we're going to get snow. So I'm really disoriented with them mowing their lawn. It was uncanny, and made me feel like I was in a different world totally. So in any case, that was my excitement for today. Not that I get excited easily, but in any case. Um, let's see if there's any questions here. My dear friend, let me see here. My dear friend Samantha, um, who I used to see at the healing circles in Evanston, Illinois, a long time ago. She found me, which was really neat, with this site, and she saw that I was answering questions, to the best of my ability. And so Samantha wrote, I'm feeling that I'm getting messages from spirit, but having a hard time deciphering them. Well, um, you know, we do get messages all the time from other spirits and of friends, of loved ones, of people that we don't even know about or part of our previous lineages or part of this lineage that we didn't even know. Maybe a great grandfather or something like that, or their guides, directs, and they're here to guide us, direct us, and protect us in different ways. But we have to be reciprocal. And so she wrote, I feel that I'm getting the messages from spirit, but having a hard time deciphering them. And I think that as a person learns to be calm within themselves, they can have these things happen to them more purposefully. They're happening anyways, and you're not controlling it. And so, if you're not controlling it, then uh, uh, you're not, in a sense, playing God or demanding it, because that's what control is demand in some sense. And they're happening naturally anyway without you doing anything. But we have the ability to have this happen more often. And it does happen more often when, let me get rid of this screen here. It does happen more often when we become conscious that they are happening. And but as we become conscious, our first tendency is to think about what we just got. And as we think about these things, we just cut the process off. So the idea is not to think about it, but just recognize, recognize our thinking for the moment and realize that we are perceiving something and still being open to it, retraining ourselves. I hope that makes sense. We're literally retraining ourselves. And so we're not cutting off the process by recognizing it and talking about it or thinking about it. What we're doing is we're continuing to be open to it. And then we find that it happens more often. But the idea is to recognize it, recognize our thinking, and to be open to the possibility that, okay, we're perceiving something. Hey, Julie, good to see you here. Thank you for being here. And Connie, thank you for being here very, very much. And if you've missed anything, you can go back to the replay. Please feel free. And as soon as we're finished, it'll be posted within a minute or two. So The idea is when we are perceiving something, very simply, going back to the mindset of we're perceiving, being conscious of it, and not cutting it off. Not cutting it off. Then we find that, as Samantha says, that she gets messages from Spirit, it's from someone that's trying to share with her about her life, and as we all get, and it's a guidance, it's a direction, and that's what's important. So just be open-minded without the overthinking about it. Otherwise, we're cutting it off when we start to think about it. It's not going to happen. It's no different than years ago. I was telling a story the other day to the class that I was having. It's no different than at one workshop, there's tons and tons of people there, and I was saying, okay, who here's had a spiritual experience? And everyone raised their hand. And I said, okay, how long did the actual experience itself last? And it lasts between maybe 3 to 10 seconds. And so, and everyone said, yeah, mine lasted for 5 seconds, or mine lasted maybe about 4 seconds, or 10 seconds, up to 10 seconds. And I said, okay, we'll give it the benefit of a doubt. And I called on one person. I said, when was the last time you had a spiritual experience? And they said, oh, just the other day I had one. And I said, that's awesome. How often do you have spiritual experiences then? Oh, maybe twice a week. And they were so proud of this. And that's about average, 2 to 5, we'll say. So we'll say, okay, I said, we'll give you the benefit of doubt and say you had a spiritual experience for 10 seconds 2 times in that week. So that's 20 seconds of spiritual experience. And then I said, what about all the other time? 20 seconds. 20 seconds a week times 52. Oh my God, 104 seconds of spiritual experience you think you're having every year? And that's what it turns out to be until we cut it off. Hi, Jill. Good to see you, my dear friend. So here we are having, we think, 104 seconds a year of spiritual experience when we're always having spiritual experience intermittently throughout the day, many, many times. And we're perceiving guidance and direction from all different sources in our life. And even that we don't know of in our life, we're still perceiving information and the so-called spiritual experience, as we call it. And so this is possible, as all we have to do is learn to accept it and not dilute it by talking about it, unless it's someone of your equal or a teacher, and that can understand it. Otherwise, it's going to get washed away. And so that's our place, really, is to learn how to perceive these things that are happening. And so we have the ability to expand that, to develop that, by not pre-guessing, not prejudging, or predetermining, or learning control in that way that I'm going to have a spiritual experience. Zap. No, it doesn't happen like that. It happens, and then we become cognizant of it. It's, at least in my experience, it's always been that way. Someone else may be having another experience, that's great. But this is the way, in my understanding, that this happens. It happens to us, and then we become cognizant of it, and then our first tendency is to cut it off by thinking about it, or predetermining what it meant, or whatever. And when we do have that spiritual experience, the idea is to let it dwell within us. And then it's almost like fertilizing it. for more to happen more often. And those 10 seconds twice a week for 20 seconds times, say, 52 is 520 seconds or whatever a year. No, it starts to develop and nurture and to grow into more and more and more. And it happens more often. So we have this within us. That was a great question. I love answering that as well. Over the many years I've answered that for people. So I understand your question, Samantha. Oh, Janet, my friend, she wrote, in your last call, you talked about vaporizing thoughts related to a cold virus. Well, does that apply to other diseases, which most people don't know about until the advanced stages, like cancers, heart disease, etc.? Can you think your way out of disease? A lot of questions here. Also, does the disease then become your fault? You have brought it on yourself due to thoughts. Thanks for helping with this. Well, first of all, what you call vaporizing, I didn't use those terms, but it's, I see it leaving as a vapor. And so my understanding and what I've always developed and learned and grew into was perceiving it, say like being in the mind of that virus when I'm with someone or I think of it, which we're pounded with it all day long. It's a part of society now for the time. And so we're subject to it in so many ways. Subliminally, we're subject to it with people around us that we see that do activities. We don't want to touch things. And so every single time, and this is what I've trained myself to do in my life, every single time that, hey, Nahini, good to see you here, my friend. What I do is I have the thought, and I've even trained myself, okay, if I had the thought, then I have another thought deep inside of me about it, a caution or a precaution. And I watch that thought leave me. It's almost like it's that thought that you have, it's in the mind. So it's whenever the subject comes up within me, I watch it leave me like a vapor. So far, I hug people. I'm around people all the time. Even with the isolations, I'm still available to people outside and on the internet, which you're not going to get anything. But I'm subject to it all the time. And it seems to be working for me in my life. And this is what I do. And at the same time, I don't get freaked out inside. I don't get distraught inside over it. I don't worry about it in my life. If I go into that mind, I'm going to be a part of that mind. And if I should get it, fine, and die from it, great. I don't care. But it's not a part of my mind, not a part of my thinking in my life. So, hey Janet, I'm answering your question. And so you can hear this on the replay as well. So it's there, but it's not impregnating it or attaching itself to me in the consciousness. And so I don't take it inside. And when it does sneak inside is when I have a thought of it. Then I know that it's within me somewhere, and I watch it leave in that vapor where it's non-existent, and I go on with my life. I hope that almost makes sense. And so, and then she asked the second question, does that apply to other diseases, which most people don't know about until the advanced stages? Sometimes we're subject to them at pre-birth, even while in the embryonic state in the womb, in pre-birth. And it's the feelings of the mother, the father, um, or the environment around that the mother or the father are subject to that is carried in the embryonic fluid that affects us, that develops, is part of our developmental process that we learn to adapt to at birth, from birth on. And we're still in a simple consciousness until maybe the age of 2 or 3. And so in that simple consciousness, we're adapting, we're learning, we're growing into humanness. And so things are going to affect us, and we develop the rest of our lives going into the mind of the people that surround us. And we attract that mind, they attract us, and so we learn to adapt. And in a sense, it's all survival. And so we're learning to adapt in that survival. And we attract the same people that were similar to a parent or parents or friends that we had before. And we're attracted to them, they're attracted to us. And so we form an environment around us that we develop into in life. And we portray that later in life. So the answer to your question, does that apply to these other diseases or advanced stages like cancer or heart disease or anything else? Oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes, we learn to have the disease from our environment when we were really young or what we were born into. And that's just the way that I believe it is. So, and then, can you think yourself out of a disease? Yes. Not thinking, though. We can't think ourselves out of a disease, but we can know ourselves out of disease. That means we've learned otherwise, another wisdom. And so in that wisdom, we have the ability to develop into whatever or whoever we are or choose to be in our life. We can change our minds. We all have that ability. And so we can learn to do that. We can be totally different people because we've learned from something from experience. I hope this makes sense. So if it does, please give me a thumbs up or a hashtag you rock. And so, and please do replay. There's a lot more that's being said. It'll hit you in a different way. In a sense, not to tout myself, but in a sense, it's like reading a good book. You read it one time, or you listen to this stuff one time, and then you listen to it again, you'll get something else out of it. And so I hope that makes sense. And also, she wrote, does the disease then become your fault? You have brought it on yourself due to thoughts. We're always thinking. We're always thinking of our survival in what I call the collective mind, the mass mind. And so, in a sense, fault doesn't exist. It's no one's fault. It's what we're taught. It's what we're taught to survive in the world, to express ourselves in the world, to exhibit ourselves in the world, to exaltate ourselves in the world, how we get attention, how we understand things, of what we're taught. And it's no different than, say, a person, this has happened, there's people that have come to me and said, this is wrong with me, and I might suggest to them that, well, maybe it's not wrong, it's it's what you learned, and someone will think about that, and then they chose to turn their life around by not accepting that aspect of themselves. Then they find themselves being successful in something, or they find themselves being healthier about something. There was one woman, I love telling you the story, I've told it before too. There was this one woman who came to me while in Chicago with cancer. And some of y'all have heard this story before. And in an appointment, and she says, I just found out that I got stage 3 or 4 cancer. I don't remember what it was. And she said, can you help me, please? And so as she was talking, I just listened and listened and listened. And when you're objective and observant, there's no conversation. You're just listening, and you're perceiving information, you're perceiving things. And one of the things that I perceived with her was that I saw her picking dandelions. So I said, so tell me something. Do you live in a house? She said, yeah. I said, it's springtime in Chicago, and you have dandelions like everyone else in your yard? She says, yeah, I got a ton of them. I said, okay, what I want you to do as your exercise, I want you to go home, and I want you to start picking your dandelions by the roots. And every single time you pick a dandelion by the roots, you're picking your cancer out of you. And it was perfect for her, because she took it so darn seriously. She was eager to get out of the appointment and go home and start picking dandelions. So 2 weeks later, I saw her in another appointment. She says, I feel great. And so I said, come back in 2 months. And 2 months came. She came back. And I said, okay, what happened with the dandelions and all? She says, well, I started picking them out of my front yard, and there were so many of them. It was great. I was picking them by the roots, and I was picking it out of me. And it felt awesome at the end of each day. And I said, each day? She says, yeah. She says, then I went to my backyard, and I started picking them. And they were all over the place. And her husband wanted to put weed killer down. I said, no. And she said, no. And so she kept on picking them. But then she ran out of dandelions. And then she started going to her neighbors' yards. And she went to just everyone on the block. And lots of yards. And she was telling her neighbors what she was doing, and said, go at it. So all of her neighbors, let her pick the dandelions by the roots. And every single time, she trusted that process so much that she knew she was picking the cancer out of her, the roots of the cancer. That's what she needed. And I guess the 2 months later, after the second appointment, she came back. She says, my doctor said it was gone. He doesn't understand. And I said, awesome. So, but that was something that was shared with her that she could participate in her life. And she was able to change her life by trusting. And we're given guidances all the time. We're given direction all the time. And how much do we want to listen to them? How much do we want to follow them within ourselves, or put them aside? So yes, our thinking does get in the way, and but nothing is literally our fault. And there is no fault. There's no such thing as fault. That's a human term that doesn't belong in so-called spirituality. And we bring it on ourselves, though, through our environment of what we're taught. Who to be, how to be, and why to be. But there's another side of that. Who are we really? And why are we really? And we get to transverse that. We get to change that entire scenario with understanding. That woman who picked the dandelions, her life changed in many, many ways. And I've seen that with so many people. But we have that ability to do that. And we can't blame ourselves for anything. We can dislike an activity that we have. We can dislike something about ourselves, but we can change that. The idea is not to hold the grudge for ourselves. That's what the important thing is. Because once we hold a grudge, we're holding on to the past. And if we're holding on to the past, we're not living forward. We're still living in the past. But in reality, we can't really live in the past because the past is history. And our consciousness doesn't really fit in the past. But our consciousness does fit into the potential future, if that makes sense. We couldn't fit into the past in our current consciousness because it's expanded, it's developed, it's grown, it's evolved. I hope that makes sense. I truly hope it does. All right, good. So we do bring these things onto ourselves of trying to live in the past, and that's what people call be here now. Like Baba Ram Das wrote back in the 60s, be here now. That's what that means. And it's not meaning to be a space cadet or anything else. It's being responsible, the ability to respond. That's responsible means. And that's what it is. It's the ability to respond to, in a real way, of being a real human. And that's when we're intermeshing the spiritual with the humanity, which is the reason why we're here, to get to know ourselves. There's no other rhyme or reason, as I always say, of what people call reincarnation, except to get to know ourselves. We've been here hundreds of thousands of times, and we're going to be here hundreds of thousands of times more for the whole purpose of getting to know ourselves, which is integrating into the mind of what I call the godliness, the divinity within, the creator, the universal mind, whatever you want to call it, the nameless one, whatever you want to call it. We're a part of it, and it's a part of us, and we're getting to know ourselves. And as Crystal, my friend, wrote, it's in my Father's house, there's many mansions. Yes, and we get to experience them as well, even ones we're not even cognizant of. There's so many mansions, it's unfathomable, even for me. I'll give you an example of one. A couple people here have heard this story. It was, I guess, a couple years ago. It was one of many experiences that I've had over the many, many years and still have had since then. But I was waking up in the early morning hours from a sleep, and I was disappointed in myself that I didn't know, I need my sleep. And so as I was trying to clean my head out again and get into mind of sleep, then all of a sudden, consciously, or semi-consciously, I should say, I found myself looking into, I was standing in my bathroom, and there I have these two cabinets, and I have this obsessive compulsive behavior where every night I have to put out all my garments for the next day, all ready for after I get out of the shower. So here I am, I'm in the bathroom off to the side, and I see two more me's, two of them, and one on the right and one on the left, and they're doing the exact same things that I would do at night in preparation for getting my garments ready for the next day. And I saw the garments, they were blue jeans, and each of them, and the blue jeans had the same markings that my blue jeans had, that I was set out for the next day, and the undergarments or whatever, and a shirt and whatever, and t-shirt, and no, one of them didn't have a t-shirt, but uh, and I looked at both of them, and they were facing the cabinets that they were putting them on, and I said, uh, excuse me, you guys are me. And they couldn't hear me, they couldn't see me. There was no comprehension because there were like etheric fields in between where my words wouldn't reach them because they were on different consciousnesses. And so they kept tending to the clothing and getting all the wrinkles out and everything else for the next day. And so I said to myself, okay, I'm going to start working with one person at a time. So I chose the person on the right, and the guy who was me on the right. And I said, hello, you're me. He couldn't hear me. And so I started using what I call my word, and it got stronger and stronger and stronger, not louder, but stronger. And he heard something. And so I continued with that. And then he heard what I was saying, that you're me. And he couldn't see me though, but eventually, as the consciousness became aware of the words, the visual started to come in. And then he saw me, and I said, look, you're me. And he couldn't understand that. I said, well, look at the jeans, the same markings, the same kind of shirt, not the exact same patterns, but a different pattern shirt, but the same kind that I would wear. And I said, everything's the same. And the same blue jeans, though, with the same marking on them. And he finally understood, but he didn't know how that was possible. And I said, there's someone else to your left that is you, that is also me. And he couldn't understand that. Then I got the other person's attention and did this similar thing with him. Got his attention. It finally broke through the consciousness, and there was a visual and audio with my voice. And he didn't talk to me, but he saw me and he heard me. And then I said, there's someone that's next to you who's the same, of a similar consciousness. And finally, they got to perceive of each other. So then, I guess my place was to help them to become conscious of other realms as well. They live in a different consciousness. They have different lives. They have different things transpiring in their lives. But the thing I learned from that and other times in the past was that they affect me in my life, and I affect them in their life when dynamic moments happen. We're not conscious of that kind of consciousness, so there's other kinds of consciousness that are perceivable. And that was it. Then I was able to say, okay, let me sleep now, and I went to sleep. My purpose was done. Then I can always say, may the real me stand up. But that was a joke. And so we have so many realms that we dwell upon and dwell within. It's unfathomable. And there's no right or wrong, good or bad. But as we become conscious of these things, we're opening up to be more conscious. And from the subconscious, from the super subconscious, which is all around, it's alive, it's well, it's within us, and it's all around us, in everything and everyone. So, yes, there is no fault, and we get to perceive of things as we see ourselves not in fault, then we're free. So, how are we doing on time? We're doing pretty good. All right. And so there are many mentions. And thanks for that thing, Crystal. I appreciate that. Um, let's see if there's any others here. Um, question. Uh, since it is, I'll skip some of the other questions, but since it is close to Easter, I will share an experience that is very personal to me. A number of months ago, after having phone sessions with you and reading your book, I was happy that that I had the experience of it. One evening, my roommate was upset with me because she had a cramping feeling in her chest. I knew she wanted me to help her, and and are some people more gifted as healers, or can anyone be a healer? I think more people in our world have experience of it. More people than ever before, because we're evolving and we've had little experiences that lead into another time of more experience and different avenues of experience. We all have various abilities that are innate within us. And there's a consciousness from other people that we can perceive. So even if we see someone or hear someone doing something, say at one time, somewhere within us that's stored in our memory, in our subconscious mind, and in our tissue and in our cells. It's in the memory. And we can do these things through trust. And that's all it is trust. All healing is knowing and accepting. And once we have a perception of it, we're seeing it through our knowing. And then, if we accept it through the trust, there's an application of it. Even if you've never had an experience of working with another person before, you have the ability to work with it. I'd love to teach you how to do the formation of it, and how to do the organization of it, and how to do the application of it, but you have it within you. And everyone does to varying degrees. But in this particular lifetime, many people have a calling, but it may not be their place this time according to their soul experience. They may only need to be worked with. And that's okay. There's nothing incorrect. That's why people like I'm here, or people like you are here, to help people. There's so many different modalities. None of them are incorrect. It's the mind that sabotages that, if that makes sense. It's the mind that someone may have an experience, and they give all the credence to it, and they don't know that if they let themselves go enough, they can repeat that experience, or they may have one or two experiences and not follow through with it, or know how to follow through with it. And then they've cut themselves off for this time, Or someone may be used for just one experience of life, and that's okay. There's no right or wrong, good or bad. It's just that many a time, in many situations, someone needs to learn how to do a little bit more with it, with their experience. I hope all this stuff makes some sense, and if not, please write it in the box, and type it out, please. And so there's no one that's more gifted than anyone else. It's not possible. The bum you see on the street may have been your teacher last time around, or maybe the next time around. Who's better or lesser or greater? It's non-existent. And so And then she wrote, or Crystal wrote, a few years ago I had a discomfort in my lower body for a long time. And one day I just asked for it to go away, and it did. We all have this ability. Hey, Joanne, good to see you. Hi. Good to see you, my dear friend. And so, uh, you know, you did ask for it. You were in a moment of need. You were in total need at that time when you did ask for it to go away. But the need didn't, the next time you had need, uh, it, it may have been answered in another way for something else. But you can, in your mind, uh, go back, if you can, to the sense of need that you had. And if you go back to it, you can utilize that for other things of life. It depends upon how deep it's coming from the heart, and what your intent is. You'll see that as you practice that, or try to emulate that, you get another sense of how deep to go. And no matter how deep you go, if you can go deeper and deeper and deeper within yourself, you'll find that what I call your prayer is answered. Your prayer will be answered. And that's what that is. Some people call it faith healing. Some people call it empathetic healing. The empath, um, um, there's very few that really exist in this world today, as I tell people through my own experience. That ended over 200 to 300 years ago. Now there's an evolution that's happened, and we don't have to take on someone else's pain to suffer, and for them not to suffer. If you're most 99% of the people that I'm, or 90% of the people that I refer to as empaths, not everyone, but they take on other people's pain when they're already in pain in their life and don't know it. Emotional pain or whatever. You're just contributing to a situation, and that person never got rid of their pain because there was a cause to it. So the empath of old, in reality, is trying to take someone else's karma. Do you know what to do with someone else's karma? That you're not going to have it? So, in any case, it's the karma that I'm referring to is what made them into who they are, what they are, and why they are today. And I don't recommend for anyone to take on anyone else's karma unless you know what to do with it, how to transmute it, and how to go into that person's life and their subconscious and redirect the understanding that they developed in their life. So, end of that topic. Someone wrote, I once heard that people become more spiritually advanced and tend to move to higher altitudes. Is this true? It's a real question, and it's a valid question that I've also heard many years ago from someone. And so, no. No. The true spiritual person, I believe, is a realizer, if there's such a word, is a realizer that no matter where you are, that's home, and you can function at any altitude or in any environment. A truly realized person or spiritual person is someone that no matter where they are, it's home. I knew people many, many years ago in Chicago, about 25, 30 years ago when I was teaching there. And, they said, oh, these lessons are great, and I'm having experiences and stuff like that. And there were two people that didn't know each other, but they both ended going from Chicago. They went to Sedona because they heard about it, how spiritual it was with all the vortexes and everything else. it was a couple years later I was invited to do a workshop there, and uh, I had half a day to myself, so I figured, oh, I'm going to go look up these people. I eventually found them through communications and stuff. That and one was living in a flop house, and the other one was living in an old burnt out car in the mountains, not too far from Sedona. And they realized that they dropped everything, to drop their families, to drop their lives. One didn't have a family, but dropped their place to live and everything else to go there. And they just started walking the streets and thinking that they were great in their gifts. And they found out that it just wasn't great, and that they should have stayed home back in Chicago. And so, we don't have to go to different environments. Our environment is where we're at, no matter where we're at. There's no place better than any other place. The grass is, as they say, the grass is not greener on the other side. And so, and then someone wrote, I heard spiritual people say that they see little flashes or sparkles of light. They refer to them as angels or beings. Do you think this is true? My experience is we can focus, say, in the sky, and most often we'll see, and I asked my teacher about this 37 years, or 46 years ago, 47 years ago, and this fellow John, and he said, oh, you're talking about the nodes of light. They're like molecules or protons that are bursting in light. And he says, you can see those. And he just dropped it, and it was nothing. And so, but that's what, in 1 square inch, a circular inch, you can see thousands of them as you learn to practice looking at them. And but in some sense, I've realized in my understanding that that's what makes up life. That's what makes up light. And we all have the ability to see that. And even you have the ability to see that, the person who's writing this. And it's just a part of life. And it is true. But as far as angels, those little sparkles aren't angelics or beings of light. And they're actual light. I think it's called the proton of light, the nodes of light. He called it nodes. And then someone wrote, do you believe in the collective consciousness of humankind is affecting the weather? To some degree, I do. I really accept that. I remember many times, one time when I was in Fort Worth, I wanted to go out and it was cloudy out. And I kept praying to God, oh man, come on, and I felt so good, and I was just so eager to go out, and it was raining, and I said, I want to have a good time outside. And so, thanks, Lynn. I appreciate you putting that up. This is for anyone who would like an appointment with me or sign up for future classes or whatever, or the newsletter. And hey, Stephen Hinckley, good to see you here. Thanks for being here. My new friend. And so I started to go out. And anyone who hasn't seen the full time of this live event, then there'll be a replay in about 5 minutes within 5 minutes, after we finish up in a couple minutes. But I remember that as I went out, and I was saying, okay, God, help me, with this. And because I want to go places, I want to do something. It was a Saturday, I had nothing to do, and I just wanted to have fun. and visit the storefronts and stuff like that, and look at the art and stuff. And so as I left, it wasn't raining where I was. And every single place I went that entire afternoon for about 3 hours or 4 hours, it rained around me, but it didn't rain on me. And then at the end of the day, I was just so high with life and loving it, and the experience that was happening. It was just a miracle for me. And I got back on the bus, and it was raining on the bus. And then I got back home, and other people started coming in, and they were soaked. And I couldn't tell anyone. And so I just thought it was the neatest experience. I kept it within myself because I want to, I figured if I didn't tell anyone, I wouldn't wash it away within me. So the collective consciousness does affect, but if you're temporarily or momentarily out of that consciousness, you're in a different consciousness from within you, in that love of that divinity or the godliness or the Christ or the Buddha or whatever you want to believe in, Muhammad or Moses or whatever. If you're into it, or the universal mind or the nameless one, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't care. If you're in that consciousness, you're in it. That's what matters. That's what matters. And that's the other side of this side, and we're blending both worlds. And that's what we're here to do. That's what we're here for. So, I'm so grateful for the questions, everyone. Please, next week, we're going to be having more questions. Also, if anyone's interested in appointments, let me know. We'll be working with Zoom or FaceTime or telephone. If anyone wants to join future classes, let us know. Lynn is the hub of everything, basically, and so if you contact her, so please feel free to contact us and follow us and be a part of the spiritual healing with Mark Ehrlichs. If you're not a part of it, just request it on Facebook, and then I'll gladly let you in. And thank you, Patty. And please, if you don't mind, it helps us too in the ratings somehow or another. If you can put hashtag #YouRock without any spaces, yes, that'll help us. And so please do that. And I'm so looking forward to seeing you all again next week. And in another month, we got another healing circle. We really rocked it last night. It was awesome. And we do have the classes coming up. So thank you so very, very much for being here. I'm totally honored. And God bless you. Have fun.